I had heard about hurricanes before, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to experience that day. The kind of terror that crawls into your bones, that stays with you long after the storm has passed. It all started with Hurricane Milton. Except it wasn't the hurricane itself that brought the horror. No, it was something far worse. It was just after 10 a.m. on Wednesday when the first warning came. I was driving on I-75, not far from the Broward-Collier County line. The sky was gray, but nothing too alarming, just your typical overcast before a storm. Suddenly my radio crackled. A tornado warning. I thought, tornado? Here? Now? It didn't make sense. Hurricanes were expected, but tornadoes. This was something else. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw it. A monstrous black V-shape rising in the distance. Like a twisted shadow clawing its way up from the earth. It moved so fast. One moment it was miles away, and the next I could see debris flying into the air. I slammed the brakes. I remember pulling off the road thinking I could ride it out. I was wrong. The roar was like nothing I'd ever heard. A freight train bearing down at full speed. The wind picked up, and in the rearview mirror, I watched helplessly as cars behind me were tossed like toys. Roofs ripped off buildings, and the sky filled with broken glass, shattered metal. Everything swirling in a deadly dance. I ducked down, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white as the tornado screamed past me. When I looked up, there was nothing left behind me, just silence and devastation. The world had been turned upside down. Hours later, I found myself taking shelter in a small community center, hoping the storm had passed. People were huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. That's when I heard it, the scream of a child. Sharp, piercing, full of terror. It came from outside. Against my better judgment, I went to look. Outside, the wind had picked up again. But there, standing in the middle of the parking lot, was a little girl, no older than 7 or 8, just standing there. She was drenched, her clothes sticking to her skin, her hair whipped in every direction. She wasn't crying anymore, just staring up at the sky. I stepped toward her, but before I could call out, I saw it. The second tornado. It was moving in fast, the air thick with debris. I ran, grabbed her, and we dove into a nearby ditch as the roar grew deafening. The ground shook as if the earth itself was angry. I held onto her so tightly as the world above us was torn apart. When it was over, I looked around. The community center was gone, obliterated in seconds, but the girl, she was gone too. I still don't know where she went. She vanished just as quickly as she'd appeared. Some say she was a ghost, a warning, but I know what I saw. I know she was real. The final story is the one that still haunts me. It happened just as Hurricane Milton was making landfall. By now, everyone was terrified. Tornadoes had ripped through the state, and the eye of the hurricane was looming on the horizon. I was in St. Lucie County, huddled in a basement with my family. The wind outside had reached a deafening pitch, and the house above us groaned and creaked under the pressure. For a moment, the winds died down and we thought it was over. But then, we heard something, this strange whistling sound like someone was calling out in the distance. I crept up to the door to listen. Nothing. But as I turned to head back down, the door suddenly burst open, ripped off its hinges. A gust of wind slammed into me, throwing me down the stairs. And then, nothing. When I woke up, it was eerily silent. I walked outside. The sky was a strange shade of green. There was no sound, no wind, no rain, just a deep, unsettling calm. That's when I realized we were in the eye of the storm. But in the distance, I could see something. Something dark, swirling, another tornado, closing in fast. We barely had time to react. We scrambled for shelter, but it was too late. The last thing I remember was the feeling of being lifted off the ground, my feet leaving the earth as the world spun into chaos. When I woke up, I was miles away, lying in a field covered in mud and debris. The house was gone, my family was gone, and the storm had passed, leaving nothing but devastation in its wake. 3 tornadoes, 3 moments where death brushed past me, and yet here I am, alive to tell the tale. But every time the wind howls outside, I'm reminded of that day. That day when the sky itself seemed to turn against us. When nature unleashed a fury none of us could have imagined. And I wonder, the next time a storm comes, will I be so lucky? text on screen. Nature is unpredictable, but sometimes it feels like something more sinister. Stay safe, stay alert.